been good enough to be joined by their General Manager of Footy in Peter Bell. Peter, welcome to the show.
Jules, BJ, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Before we get on to Jesse Hogan, we've just been talking the last couple of days about the situation with David Mundy. Where's that sit for David in 2021?
Yeah, we've been having regular discussions with Dave. Clearly, he's a club stalwart and had an exceptional year. I suppose at the start of the year, we were thinking that at sort of 34, 35 years of age, this would be his last. And then he just performed so well, and perhaps the sort of the season itself suited his game style as well. He ended up finishing fifth in our best and fairest, equal third, but then got shuffled back to fifth in a countback system. So had an exceptional year. We've had regular discussions with him, and I'm sure that over the next few weeks, maybe even days, we'll come to an arrangement for him to play on.
What's kind of been the hold-up there? Is it a money thing, or is it a list thing, which
mainly
we continually highlight in this show?
Yeah, mainly list sizes, BJ. It's been really frustrating, and Dave and his family have been incredibly accommodating. But the issue is we've got a few guys in that sort of position, and so without having absolute clarity around what the list sizes were going to be, we, like all the other clubs, had to take a sort of conservative course of action. And clearly when we were able to move Jesse to GWS, it meant that there was a degree of comfort there that we could elevate those discussions with Dave.
As a footy club, Peter, when did you come to the realisation that it might be the best time for Jesse to ply his trade somewhere else?
Yeah, sort of towards, when we got back from our second hub in Cairns, we had a number of discussions with Jesse and his management, and also David Walls, our head of player personnel, obviously. And given where things had gone, and given that Jesse had felt that it really wasn't working for him in Western Australia, we agreed that it might be good for him to explore his options, which Jesse and his management did. And reasonably quickly, Jesse was able to find another club, which is obviously GWS, and we worked through that. Jason McCartney and David Walls, and look, I've already mentioned, and it's very obvious that we gave up some really valuable draft picks for Jesse. It hasn't worked out, but we obviously wish Jesse all the best moving forward. And then having Jesse walk away from his contract with us obviously frees up some TPP space where we can do some other things, and a list spot, which is important, which we've just been talking about.
Do you feel as a club, Peter, that you're confident that you did enough for Jesse to try and get the best out of him, or do you feel that maybe Jesse could have done a lot more for himself?
Look, I think when you're in these sorts of circumstances, BJ, I think you do reflect a lot. And you give everything that you've got, and you know that it's an all-of-club decision. For a decision of that magnitude, when you're giving up the draft picks that we did, and you're talking about a player who has got some things off-field that he was working through, it really is an all-of-club decision and all-of-club resource trying to get the best out of a particular player, in this case, Jesse. So we thought we gave it an absolute our best shot. Were there things along the way that maybe we could have done a little bit better, or maybe Jesse could have done a little bit better? Possibly, but I sit here very comfortably that our club supported Jesse to the best of our ability.
What's been the feedback from your members, Peter? And obviously Talkback Radio in Perth, I'm sure, has been pretty hot on this topic. As you say, you gave up some significant draft picks to get Jesse in. 2 years later, he's going out the door for pick now what is now pick 55. What's been the general reaction from your members and supporters to this move?
I'd be fair to say it's been mixed. Clearly, our supporters don't like to see, the erosion of pick value when it hasn't worked out. So that's understandable. Our supporters also see that, over the last 4 years, we've been in a position where we've taken a lot of top 10 picks. I think second to Gold Coast over the last 4 years. So it's not like we've had an aversion to the draft at all. And at the time, I think most people can understand the attraction to Jesse. I heard you earlier, Jules, going through, his record at Melbourne. And, at his age, at 23, when he came to us, he put together a phenomenal record. And it had been an area through that stage for us where we'd struggled up forward. Matt Taberner had a number of injuries at that stage. We tried a few other younger players, which hadn't really worked. And we thought that we potentially would be able to get a power forward that would play for 7 or 8 years for us. So So the reaction has been mixed, and that's understandable. What it leaves us with, though, I believe, is two big forwards that finished 2 and 3 for contested marks in the AFL this year in Rory Lobb and Matt Taberner. We think Nat Fyfe can play a little bit forward as well, and Sam Sturt, who hasn't had a lot of exposed form, but was good enough to win a NAB Rising Star in his debut game in round 1, which seems like an eternity ago. Plus some other forwards in there. We feel like we've still got a pretty potent mix. We need to get the ball inside 50 more, and to our forwards' advantage a bit more as well.
Whilst we're talking about tall forwards, what about the future and what it looks like? What are your plans around Logan McDonald?
Yeah,
trying to acquire his services.
Yeah, it's look. You would think that Logan's going to be taken in the first couple of picks, potentially even pick 1. It is extremely difficult to get up the order to that sort of level. So clearly we've workshopped a few ideas. We've got currently pick 12 at the moment. What we wouldn't be doing, BJ, is we're not going to be trading any of our young players. We see guys like Chera and Brayshaw and Caleb Sarong and Hayden Young as being the cornerstone of our team for the next decade. So, we'll keep workshopping ideas, but at this stage, our ability to attract a pick that would be in the frame to select someone like Logan, that'd be remote, I would think.
You mentioned Chera and Brayshaw there, Peter. They're both out of contract next year. Are you looking at extensions over summer to lock them away? Because obviously there'll be a lot of clubs interested.
Yeah, I mean, for both of those guys in particular, they finished 3rd and 4th in our best and fairest. They've just turned 21 after the season, I understand, played 50 games, and we're really beginning to see their games flourish this year particularly. So it's very much in our plans to lock them away for longer, and I understand that those discussions have started.
And Connor Blakely, still 2 years on his contract, but you sort of said he's free to have a look around. How's that going? And do you expect there's a bit of interest, or do you think you'll still be at your footy club next year?
Look, we had a really open and honest conversation, as we do with all the players, and Connor clearly was really frustrated that he didn't get the opportunities in that midfield group that he had done previously. And what we know about Connor is he can really find the footy. I was reading somewhere the other day that in his career he had 8 or 9 sort of 30-plus possession games. Not that possessions are everything, but he was frustrated with his lack of opportunities. So, of course, with that discussion, there came an agreement that if he wanted to have a look around, we were more than happy for him to do so. We haven't heard anything from Connor or his management at this stage where he's indicated that he might like to go somewhere else.
Just going back to Jesse, obviously, a lot of the time a player going home is the best thing for them. Obviously, that foot injury came at a really bad time a couple of years ago. But, I mean, why do you think it didn't work for Jesse going home?
Yeah, you touched on it there, I think, Jules. And there'd be some personal stuff as well that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk
absolutely.
about. But coming into a new team, BJ's experienced it. I've experienced it. It is a daunting sort of prospect. He came in and was rehabilitating that navicular, which meant that he was, you do feel a little bit isolated, notwithstanding everyone's trying to make you feel welcome and whatever else. Rehabilitation and rehabilitating an injury can be a lonely place. He has spoken about initially he went and lived with some family, which was a fair way away from the club, and he said that sort of made him feel a little disconnected early on as well, and he wasn't able to form the relationships that he would have liked to have early in his time. And then secondary to that, he re-injured that navicular, so back into rehab again. The long lonely hours in rehab. It's well documented that he took a further period of time away from the game on a mental health break, if you like. So all of those things together, plus, to be perfectly honest, I think it is a big footy town here in Western Australia, in Perth and Western Australia. So with just 2 teams and enormous interest, and he's a pretty noticeable guy as well. So he was finding that, he had eyes on him all the time, whether he went down to the shops or down to the cafe for a coffee. And it's not something that he enjoyed particularly.
One quick one before we let you go. Jordan Clark, have you asked the question?
We're monitoring that situation, but he's obviously contracted, and look, until we get an indication that he'd be interested, we're happy to respect that contract.
Awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck for the rest of the trade period and the draft period.
Thanks, guys. No problems.